Would Burkina have collapsed without the coup? Since the MPSR took power in September 2022, one idea has been circulating constantly in the media and on social networks. Without the MPSR, Burkina Faso would have collapsed. But what do the facts say? In this episode, we compare the situation before and after the coup, two separate slogans from reality. Before the coup. To truly understand what changed, we need to go back to the situation at the beginning of 2022. In January 2022, Burkina was already facing a major security and humanitarian crisis. 40% of the territory was outside of state control, but 60% was still under administration. Cities like Djibo and Dori were under blockade, but strategic roads remained open. In terms of security, the country ranked fourth globally among the most affected by terrorism. According to the Global Terrorism Index, GTI, there were 586 deaths caused by terrorist attacks, spread over 216 incidents, an average of nearly 3 deaths per attack. The country had a GTI score of 8.27 out of 10, a level indicating extreme violence and intense terrorist conflict. Burkina alone accounted for around 10% of terrorism-related deaths worldwide that year, an already alarming figure long before the MPSR coup. The humanitarian situation was no better. The number of internally displaced persons, IDPs, was already very high, between 1.5 and 1.9 million people, according to OACA fleeing jihadist violence. In other words, the country was in serious trouble, but it was still functioning, at least partially. The administration existed, institutions were still holding on. This was not a collapsed state. After the 2022 coup, however, the MPSR military leaders promised to restore security and save the country from chaos. But what actually happened? In their first year in power, the numbers skyrocketed. In 2022, according to the 2023 Global Terrorism Index, Burkina Faso became the second most affected country in the world by terrorism. 1,135 people were killed in armed attacks. Most strikingly, Burkina alone accounted for 17% of global terrorism-related deaths, an astonishing figure. Never in its history had the country reached such a level of violence. The following year, in 2023, the situation worsened. According to the 2024 GTI, Burkina moved from second to first place globally. There were fewer attacks, but they were deadlier. 1,907 deaths in just 254 incidents, with an average of 7.5 deaths per attack, the highest rate among all countries ranked. 23% of global terrorism-related deaths occurred solely on Burkina Faso territory, almost a quarter of the world's victims. In 2024, the trend remained dramatic. Despite a relative drop, 1,532 people still lost their lives to terrorist attacks. The country remained at the top of the global ranking, with 20% of all terrorist-related deaths worldwide. The military remains in power, and promises of national recovery are still being repeated. But the data tells a different story. In 3 years under MPSR management, the annual death toll has tripled. Burkina's share of global terrorism deaths went from 17 to 23%, then to 20%. The country has become the epicenter of global terrorism. Far from saving the nation, the MPSR coup has coincided with its security collapse, and this reality has also been acknowledged by religious and humanitarian leaders. In July 2025, during a widely noted public address, Cardinal Philippe Ouédraogo painted a grim picture of the situation, citing cross-check data from UNHCR, OCHA, and several national and international NGOs. Here is what he reported. Over 8,000 people have been killed in targeted attacks, armed clashes or assassinations of civilians. More than 2.2 million internally displaced persons, IDPs, are currently recorded. Over 35,000 Burkina Faso have fled to neighboring countries. Togo, Ghana, Benin, and Côte d'Ivoire are in extreme vulnerability. Nearly 6,000 schools are closed, depriving over 1 million children of education. Hundreds of health centers are out of service, destroyed or inaccessible. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of farmland are abandoned, while roads, markets, and economic infrastructure are destroyed or mined. Did the coup save Burkina Faso? There is no evidence to support that claim. On the contrary, the number of deaths has tripled. The country rose from fourth to first in global terrorism rankings. IDPs and refugees have reached unprecedented levels. Essential services like education, health, and food security have collapsed.